All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Jen Lazier here with the Quilt. Thanks for joining us. We are recording this session, and we're very pleased to have Jen Schopf from IU with us and Jason Zarowski from ESNet. Both are the co-PIs from the Engagement and Performance Operations Center, the NSF-funded center, EPOC, as I think most folks are familiar with their acronym. To walk us through the new CC STAR solicitation from the National Science Foundation, to point out some of the areas to pay attention to, and they're here to answer your questions about the new solicitation as well. I think Jen's going to lead us off here. Jen, would you prefer to hold questions to the end, or is it okay for folks to raise their hand or put some questions in the chat room as we go along?
Questions as we go along are great. I won't be able to see the chat room, so maybe you or Jason could watch that and interrupt as makes sense.
You got it. I'll keep an eye on it.
All right, so let me just, of course, this worked in practice. Right, we're good?
We're good.
Okay, so I'm not going to do a whole lot on the background of the CC STAR program. What I'm going to talk about is I'm going to give a 2-minute overview of what EPOC is. I'm going to talk a little bit about the differences between this year's program and the last year's program. I'm going to talk about the missteps and the gotchas that we've seen with people who have come to us for help in the past. And I'm going to have scattered throughout this links to both documents that we have, documents at faster.data, other places you can get references, and this email on the bottom, which is epic@iu.edu, which is all of the ways to get in touch with us. So, first, how do we actually make this go forward? Come on. Right. This is a really, really important point, and if Kevin Thompson joins here or Deep Mahdi join, I want to make sure we're absolutely clear. What I'm talking about is our opinion and our personal experience. If you have questions about the solicitation, are you eligible? Is this an okay cost? Is that an okay cost? We can give you our opinion, but you really should go to the NSF program officers. They are the ground truth. They will tell you everything you need to know. Everything that we're saying here is just our opinion. Just big disclaimer on that. So 2 slides on EPOC. We were actually funded through this program a couple years ago to help with end-to-end performance writ large. We all know end-to-end performance, collaborative science is hard. There are multiple pieces involved there. Even as you look at this particular solicitation, which is focusing on campus cyber infrastructure, what your campus science projects do and how they collaborate with the world around them makes a huge difference into what you should be asking for from this program, which is a part of what we're hoping that we can give you some advice on. Understanding the end-to-end performance is really hard because you've got a lot of different pieces in between, right? No one controls all of those pieces. Most end users don't know what performance to expect. The network is has so many built-in failovers, and soft failures are everywhere and you can't find them. So that's why we created EPOC. We have 6 main activities. I'm really going to only talk about the first 2 in a little bit. If you want more general EPOC stuff, we've got a bunch of talks, we've got a bunch of details on our website, but I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions. The biggest piece since we've started are what we're calling roadside assistance and consulting. So the same as if your car breaks down on the side of the road, you call AAA. My data transfer is not working today. Who can I ask for help? Is it my side? Is it your side? I'm not sure. So we created this roadside assistance and consulting activity. We've done over 130 of these to date with people from 40 different states and 10 or more countries. So really just writ large. Send mail into epic@iu.edu. We can help with suggestions for your data architecture. We can help talk to you about your science users. But I just had a weird echo. Nope. We can help with some performance assessment. We then take the common ones of these, put them out on fasterdata.es.net. So how is this year's program different from last year? So solicitation we're talking about is 21,528. It replaced last year's 20,507, which replaced 19,533. This is the solicitation for networking and other cyber infrastructure elements.
I have an appointment on Thursday at 2.
Someone's got an appointment on Thursday. I can hear all about it.
Unable to get out of my job.
Thank you. It gets updated every year. One of the things I'll really stress is you need to read the whole solicitation. One of the challenges in writing a proposal to an NSF grant is you have a picture in your head about what you want to ask for. NSF doesn't care about that. NSF has a list of things that they want to fund. And what you need to do is figure out how to tell the story of what you want so that it matches what they want to fund. Read the whole solicitation. Even back in the bits that you think are just legalese, section 5 and 6, there are extra review criteria for this solicitation. So really read it all the way through. Take notes. This is your Bible, right? Take notes on it. There are a lot of requirements in this solicitation. One of the changes was supposed to have been having a summary table for each piece. Unfortunately, in my going through it, I found requirements that weren't in the summary tables. So go through it with a fine-tooth comb when you put in your proposal. The big changes this year are there are 2 deadlines. Generally, this comes out, like the day before Thanksgiving, and it's due, the day after Christmas or whatever is pretty much the worst time you can imagine for your family holidays. This year, there's a deadline on March 1st and a second deadline October 11th. I don't know the reasoning behind this. I don't know any of the story behind it, but we have some additional notice, which is nice. Last year, these were due in mid to late January, which is really, really challenging for a lot of folks. This year, and we were warned about this, the cyber team, which had been Area 5, was removed. So those proposals, there's no activity like that you can propose for anymore. The anticipated funding level and the number of words have changed some. Those are generally guidelines in any case, but really the core elements are very, very similar if you do a word-by-word look between this year, last year's solicitation, and the year before. The big similarities are the core parts of this program. Science-driven requirements. Every aspect of this program should be motivated by a science use case, some kind of end-to-end science need. Even section 5, which are planning grants, you need to say what kind of science you're thinking about. In an ideal world, your science-driven requirement would be something as straightforward as, Jane chemist came to me and she can't move her data. If we had this piece of infrastructure in place, she could do this bit of science and get X number more publications every year, okay? Getting something that straightforward is challenging, if not impossible in real life. Every area has a lot of requirements. Some are listed in the summary, some aren't. Go through it with a fine-tooth comb. Come up with a list. Come up with a list early, then before you submit it, go through the list again, because it's really easy to miss these. All of the areas, except for the planning grant, I believe, require a campus cyber infrastructure plan. This is a 5-page supplemental document, so this is not part of your main 15-page proposal. This is a separate document. I'll have a slide on that in a minute. The other piece is all of it. You have to document your partnerships via letters of collaboration. So this is your science partnerships, your partnerships within your institution, your partnerships outside of your institution. And these are letters of collaboration, not letters of support. What that means is you have to include something in the letter that says what you are going to do. It can be, we're having conversations. It can be, we'll be using this equipment or working with their staff in these ways. It cannot be, Jen Leisure says, I'm really smart, so you should give me this proposal for my project. Not that you wouldn't do that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what we can do to help you from EPOC, and EPOC is listed explicitly in this in a couple different places. We actually set up a whole website for this, which you can go to as well. I think that link is maybe on the next page. I went through the questions we got last year and the year before, and they kind of spread into 4 categories, although the first was the biggest by far. Consultations on roughly data architecture review. I'm designing a DTN, a DMZ, I'm selecting some equipment. Does this equipment fit? What else should I be looking at, etc. We won't tell you one vendor versus another vendor, but we can give you some insight into memory sizes and CPU sizes and what's worked well for others. We actually have written a couple new documentation documents for both 100G DTNs and 100G persona nodes, because a lot of people are interested in them. Spoiler is there, you might need the biggest thing you can build, and I'll talk about that in a sec as well. So roughly 75% of the questions we got were kind of in this design space for your data architecture. It's more than just the network. It's the end-to-end space that you're trying to justify. We got a handful of questions on securing a network or intrusion detection systems. Most of the time we do those collaboratively with Trusted CI. We got a few requests for application deep dives. This is how our process for working with a campus to understand science drivers. This is not something we can do between now and the proposal deadline, but if you're interested in doing this or pursuing this, it is something we can have a conversation about going forward. We also got tests to borrow our tester if the proposals were successful. So we have a Viavi tester which can do 1, 10, 40, or 100 gig tests end to end. It's currently sitting in New York testing some links between here in London and here in Copenhagen, but it'll be back before the results of this come. Okay. So this, on the bottom of this page, epoc.global/cc, that's the web page I made reference to, which has all of this data in detail. We've set it up just for this solicitation. We kind of list out 1, 2, 3, 5 areas which we can help you with. Identifying science drivers, helping you with your data architecture plans, looking at measurement and monitoring plans, campus CI, and letters of collaboration. So science drivers, as I've said, is the big thing for this program. It's actually the driver for all NSF programs, if you think about it. Most of the time, it's more, NSF funds more research driven, so chemical research, as opposed to infrastructure to help chemical research. But if you don't have science drivers, then you're at a loss. The common misstep we see here is that what the science drivers request doesn't line up with what the infrastructure is included in the proposal. So if your science drivers say, we need more storage, writing a proposal saying we're going to build a DMZ to support the science driver, you can see how that might not be a great justification. Another piece is making sure that the infrastructure is sized correctly for your science drivers. You may need a DTN, you may need a data transfer node in that archival storage. However, if your campus infrastructure is at 1 or 10G and your instrument that's producing the data can only drive at 1G, and the person that they're sending the data to can only catch at 10G, probably doesn't make sense to spec out 100G DTN. Okay, so you have to have that match, not just in terms of functionality, but sizing between the science driver and the infrastructure. And when I say science drivers, I really mean talking to a scientist. So we'll support high energy physics is not what they're really looking for. We've seen people be much more successful with, you know, here I have Dr. Chris Smith has a virus modeling project. They need this to do this science. So getting specific researchers at your institution. This is challenging, and we can talk to you more about how you can dig those out if you need to. One of the ways that we do this, if you're putting in a planning grant, for example, is we can work with you to do a deep dive. A number of you have probably seen us talk about deep dives. This is basically how we have structured conversations with campuses to understand the science going on a campus versus the IT going on. It's based on the ESNet facility requirements reviews. We're trying to adapt these to a non-face-to-face interaction. It's really, really challenging because a big piece of this has always been the energy of the room, getting together scientists and CI people and administrators and talking things through. But one of the challenges is we often identify issues that have nothing to do with technology and everything to do with the politics or the sociology going on at an institution. So I'm not going to talk about this. This I think sums up our experience with deep dives in a nutshell. You know, a lot of IT is designed a certain way. Users want to do something else, and it's not always a great match. So how can we move beyond that? That's one of the things to think about as you approach this solicitation. I mentioned we could help with data architecture review. This is required by areas 1 through 4. They require both a specification and diagrams. Some of them specifically say network diagrams, but really you want to specify your entire data architecture. The biggest missteps we've seen in this to date, and your mileage will vary. Again, this is my opinion. This is not NSF saying anything. We have seen some folks work with vendors, especially in a new relationship, where a vendor will recommend what is best for them, perhaps not the best for you. You might say, well, we can spend up to $150,000 on a piece of equipment X. And they say, oh, we have just the thing. It's exactly $150. Yeah, you can see where that's going. Just so we're not saying don't work with vendors. We're saying be careful and make sure that what's being suggested meets your needs. It's really important to have this end-to-end match, like I was talking about before, and connecting the how will this be used to the what will this be used. Again, this is matching your science drivers, which are underneath all of this. We get questions about security and intrusion detection systems. Von Welch has run a great team with Trusted CI across 5 different institutions now. If you get in touch with us, we will pull them in and talk to them about what you need in that space. There's a lot of interesting aspects that could be included. And then, of course, post-award in this space, I mentioned this tester that we can loan out. If you talk to us ahead of time, we can include that as part of a letter of collaboration. So again, as you're designing your infrastructure, think about how it's used in real life, not theoretically. Think about how you're sizing things and how your request matches your science drivers. And again, we've got some new documents both on DTNs and for Sonar nodes to think about what you're going to be building and what your use cases are. Because doing the biggest thing you can, even if you can afford it, may not be the right thing for your science or how you're going to be using it going forward.
Hey, Jen, before we move on, we've got a question in the chat room asking, would the CC Star opportunity cover the cost of vendor-supported resources versus home-built solutions?
That's an Ask NSF question. I don't believe that it specifies that one way or another. Some of the areas have constraints on how much money can be spent on people. One of the areas has a constraint on how much money can be spent on equipment. I would come up with a specific question like that and send it off to the program officers, because I think there's probably ways it could go either way.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other question while I'm paused? Drinking?
It looks like that covered it for now, Jen.
Okay. Most of the areas require a measurement and monitoring plan, and most of them say it must be perf sonar based unless you ask for exceptions. This is one of the requirements that isn't in the summary box, but is in the text. So again, walk through the solicitation and make your own list of what you need to do here. Simply setting up a perf sonar node is not going to be considered sufficient. It was at one point, that was the requirement. You had to have a perf sonar box running on your campus. That's not a measurement and monitoring plan. If you're interested in looking at how other people have approached this, we can certainly talk to you one-on-one after this. We do a lot of work with the Perf Sonar Consortium. Both IU and LBL are part of that consortium. And again, as I mentioned, we've got a document on 100 gig Perf Sonar nodes available. Campus CI plans didn't really exist before this program, to the best of my knowledge. They're required for all areas except for planning grants, even the area with the regionals working with the individual campuses. This is meant to cover the campus-wide plan, not just your proposed work, but it should somehow reference the need for what you're proposing. You may not be the right person to write this. You may not be the right person to update this if you have to have it in-house. Actually, when we did this, we were part of a submission from IU last year. A different department entirely was the keeper of this document for us. So I had to work with them about how it was updated and how my work might fit into that space. There are samples available on fasterdata.es.net. If you have one and you haven't submitted it there, Jason would love it if you actually did submit it. And if you've got these around, we're happy to make comments on them or make suggestions. There is no standard format. There is no standard list of what is included. So, but it's 5 pages to talk about where your campus is going in this space and how what you're asking for would fit into that plan. And then the last of these 5 areas that I mentioned and are on this website are letters of collaboration. I mentioned the difference between a letter of collaboration and a letter of support. Letters of support are not allowed anymore. All of them have to have, every letter of collaboration has to have something that is happening, some level of collaboration. EPOC does letters of collaboration for any solicitation. For the CC Star last year, we did over a dozen. We're happy to work with you to figure out what would make sense. We actually have a draft letter available on the website here, which you can look at, and we have a number of bullets included, which you can keep the ones that make sense and take out the ones that don't make sense. There are things we can do as an unfunded partner. There are things we can do as a funded partner. And you'll find that's true with any of the groups that you want to collaborate with across the board. There will be different ways you can interact with them. These do take some time, so do not ask for them the day before the proposal is due. Even though we have a draft letter available online, we at least really want to have a conversation with you about what you need and what we can offer. We're pretty careful about what we promise. So,
I'm sorry to interrupt again, but before we move on, we've got a question around the CI plans, asking specifically for program area number 2, which is the regional connections with multi-campuses, asking if you need a campus CI plan for each of those participating institutions in that area 2 proposal.
The way I read this, it's supposed to be one plan for the proposal. I haven't actually seen this in practice. I don't know, maybe someone else has got more experience with that. That was a question I had at one point. I've not gotten that answered specifically from NSF. I read this as they need one campus CI plan, and in this case, it might be the plan for the regional, how that regional is going to be working and with the specified institutions. That's how I would interpret this. But that is, again, NSF is going to be your Bible truth on this.
All right, thanks. James Deaton responded that that's been his experience as well. James, I think you're saying that with a single plan from the regional perspective. All right, yes, very good. I think we've got the question answered.
Okay, so EPOC works with everybody. You don't have to be an official partner of us. You don't have to be NSF or DOE funded or even a US domestic. All you need to be able to say is you have something to do with education or research in some way with the hand wavy included. It doesn't cost you anything. This is what we do. This is our job. NSF has funded this center in part to work with people like all of you to try to figure out how to solve some of these problems. I should have said in the beginning, you can tell most of the slides I've gotten from Jason because they have a cat picture on them. You can ask us for support, epic@iu.edu. I have like 2 slides left here. One is the timing. Writing a proposal takes a lot longer than you think. 15 pages, no problem, you'll do it in a weekend. No, you really won't. A proposal done in a weekend is very unlikely to be funded. Especially these proposals, which involve getting detailed quotes for the equipment, letters of collaboration for your scientists and your IT staff and your CIO's office, CI plans. The budgets can be fairly complicated. So you really, if you're thinking about doing this for the March deadline, you need to start soon. I'm sorry about your Christmas vacation. I haven't had a real one since this program became live, I think. Your institution may also have internal deadlines for grant submissions. This one is in March, but they may, IU has this semi-dream state that they think all of the pieces except for the 15-pager are submitted to their office 10 days before a submission deadline. LBO was even longer. So that is something to plan on. All right, I'm back. This is, my guy said, super important, extra cat pictures. Everything I've just said is our opinion. This is what we've done and what we've seen and what's worked for us. NSF is the ground truth here. So please keep that in mind as you go through this. And with that, this is my last slide for contact points. More about EPIC at epic.global/cc is the page we set up just for this program. General contact and contacts for Jason and I. Thank you. So I'd like to, if we can, just open it to questions.
That sounds good. Thank you so much, Jen, for the great information. Let's start with the question first that came through the chat room here, asking if you need a letter of collaboration from the participating research scientists for the science drivers.
Generally, I would recommend that. It's a little bit fuzzy, but if you don't have a letter of collaboration with them, someone will say, well, what's going on here? And it does say that there's a requirement to document all of your collaborations through letters of collaboration. There's also, I believe this has got additional documents you have to include listing all of your documents.
There's a reinforcement here coming through the chat saying, I don't think you can overstate the difficulty of getting those letters of collaboration from all the key institutions and personnel, especially during the holiday season.
Well, and this year we're lucky with the March deadline instead of a January 15th deadline. Last year was January 21st. The year before was February 20th. With a March 1st deadline, you've got a bit more room, but I really would try to get those nailed down as soon as you can, because it is challenging. I should say, one of the interesting things about this solicitation, some NSF solicitations have a form letter which you are required to use. The NSF has a huge document called the PAPCA. It's the Policy and Practices for Proposal and Guideline or something. It used to be called the GPG. So if you do Google search for NSF 2020 GPG, you'll find the right document, which details all sorts of things about your bio sketches, about what your budget can look like, about the page margins and the font sizes and the fonts that are required. All of that is in great gory detail. It also has a recommended letter of collaboration, which is like 2 sentences. It just says, Joe Bob says they will collaborate with me. It's only recommended, and for this program, I've actually asked Kevin this explicitly. You can have a much more detailed letter saying what you're doing together and how you're doing it. And that's a great opportunity. If you are short in your program description, your 15 pages, it sounds like it's a lot. It's not. You can have some of that in the letters. Not a lot. So a letter more than 2 pages would be frowned upon. No one actually says that there's a letter length limit, but yeah. Sorry, that's a question we got last year a couple of times.
Very good. I'd welcome folks also at this point, if you want to just unmute yourself and ask your questions directly, we can certainly go that approach as well.
How many of you are planning to submit? Because half of you don't have your screen on.
Video's on, yeah. We're getting some thumbs up here.
All right. All right.
Excellent. Yeah, I have to go over to the next screen also for some of those thumbs up. That's good news.
Or do other people who have submitted and been successful, or submitted and been unsuccessful and then tried again, have any other suggestions or comments? I mean, we're always open for more information and ways to manage this.
I would just say that one of the things that we've found in our area is, you know, the willingness to share redacted successful documents to help get people over the bump of concern about what's really expected, what is successful. I mean, the CI plans and the approach that you all have with that has been, or that ESNet has with that is fantastic. But you can't overstate the value of sharing some of those redacted copies to help inspire. And I would just also say, again, on the letters, get the letters before you even have the whole proposal even figured out.
Hey, Jen. Oh, sorry. This is Jane Combs. Hi, from University of Cincinnati. Hi. I just wanted to put in a little plug before I have to leave here that tomorrow at noon Eastern time, the CARC Emerging Centers call is happening, and Jen will be on that, and Jason, and also the NSF program officers for the CC Star will be there, and you can ask them some questions directly. If you need information, we don't post the Zoom, but you can send an email to me. I'll put my email address in the chat, combsje@uc.edu, and I'll send you the information. But they will be there. It's an hour-and-a-half call at noon Eastern time. And Jen and Jason will be there too. And we have some members that'll be given some, but that'll be a good time if you want to ask some questions that may be relevant to the to a broader audience.
I will say in general, when Kevin talks about this program, he can't say anything except what's written down. That's actually like a legal requirement for NSF program officers. So he can't give you like the secret sauce of, well, what we really want is a small school from states like this. Yeah, that he can't say that. For Jason and I, our portion of that is going to be a shorter version of what I just walked through. So.
Thanks, Jane. Also, some of you on the line are aware over the course of the summer and into the fall, the Quilt hosted a seminar series on CC Star. This, of course, was before the new solicitation was out, but focused on some specific areas of putting together a proposal. I'll hit some of the topics here. These are all recorded and accessible, the materials for these, if you'd like to go back and look at them. The first is determining your desired role for your community. This is from a regional network perspective. Identifying science and application drivers, identifying campus infrastructure needs. Jason Zarowski led that one. Developing a CI plan, campus compute components, and then preparing to submit a grant. So getting, again, into a little more of the details of the system and the paperwork that's required to input. All of these are available. And we'll get you the user, there's a generic username and login if you're not a Quilt member that you can access the recordings for these as well to supplement the information that EPIC shared with you today and the slides and the pointers they have for resources. Do we have other questions or comments for Jen and Jason?
It looks like another question came in from Ashley, a little bit more about the planning grant section in section 5. So the planning grant section, I think was new last year. The way the CC Star solicitation used to be had one section structured was you could spend a year coming up with what you were going to do and then deploy in years 2 and 3, because it often takes a while to build these coalitions to be able to move forward. And what they found out was a lot of those weren't actually able to do deployments in year 2, 3. It was more like a deployment in year 3, 4, 5. So instead, they restructured this to have these planning grants where you could have some time to get groups together to talk about how you wanted to go forward. We're happy to offer support in doing that. You know, the deep dives that we do with campuses can be very helpful with that. We've got several reports written on those so that you can kind of see what they're like and kind of how you might structure things for yourself. That structure, there's a ton of stuff online, so you can do those yourself as well. You know, it can be really challenging, but this gives you space to try to build up a collaboration with the intent that, you know, if you got a planning grant, then the follow on, you would get an area 1 or area 2, or you'd apply for an area 1 or area 2.
Thank you. That makes sense.
We've been talking a little bit about about this in a wireless technologies discussion group that we started up here in the Quilt, but there are some opportunities in the new solicitation. I think this was there as well in the previous one for both in the campus and the regional areas for wireless technologies, which I think is interesting. Jen, I don't know if you had a chance to read through those parts, if you can touch on some of that for us.
Just that they're there. You need to think about how it's being used for your science, not, for example, wireless for a dorm or wireless in the hallway for enterprise. That's, I think, one of the challenges for the wireless programs is to talk about why your science drivers need it. You know, I can come up with situations, but, you know, it's not a proposal that says we want to build out more wireless to our dorms is unlikely to be successful, or we need more wireless availability in the chemistry building for classes. That's not likely to be successful. So again, it comes back to the science drivers. You know, how do you motivate it with the science drivers?
There was a campus proposal in the last solicitation that was successful. An award was made. The University of Southern Illinois for it has a wireless component, and so if folks are interested in what kind of application drivers that they use for this on their campus, some environmental sensing research and whatnot, you can find that there in the awards. I'd be glad to help you locate that as well. But as far as I know, they were the only award last year when this was available to take advantage of that.
Any thoughts on whether the October submission might have disadvantages to a March submission? So due to the nature of the timing, the March submission will likely be using FY21 funds, and the October submission will likely be using FY22 funds. You can't use FY21 because FY22 starts October 1st. The NSF budgets are always a mystery as to what they will be until they actually exist, especially with what we've got going on now. I don't know how I would play that. I will say that it is better to have a well thought out, well written, tight proposal at a later time than something you throw together and just submit at an earlier time. Part of that is having been on my share of NSF panels. I actually have a close friend who teaches people how to write NSF grants and goes around and does large scale proposals. And she has, it's the rule of threes. Your reviewer has been up till 3 in the morning. They're on their third scotch. their 3-year-old has slept for 3 hours. They're now reading your proposal. What do you want them to see? So if it's a matter of you can have a really tight, well-justified proposal in October versus, you kind of throw it up and hope it sticks, I would wait personally. That's my opinion. But it's, the funding levels are always approximate as well. I don't know if that's a good answer for you, David.
Got the thumbs up.
We're here if you need help. epic@iu.edu. You can contact Jason Zarowski@es.net. You can contact me. The easier one for me is actually jen@iu.edu, JEN@iu.edu. We're happy to help out if it makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen and Jason. And I highly recommend you take advantage of the resources that come to you through the EPOC offer for assistance and all the different resources that they're making available on the website. It is fantastic information, and should take advantage of it as much as you can ahead of your proposal writing. Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. We had a question early on about availability of the recording for today, as well as slides. I'll offer that we can distribute the slides to the folks that got invited here, and then I know the recording will be posted up on the EPOC YouTube channel once it is available and downloaded. We'll also make it available in that proposal development corner URL that I posted into our chat room a little earlier.
Yeah, and we'll put both the video and the slides off of the EPOC/CC page as well. Thank you.
All right.